Ovation. It will grow as Ripken bats here in the third. The man of 1,000 stances leads off, rips one, goodbye. Ripken homers in his final All-Star game.
Last year on Crafting the Call, we discussed how to call an All-Star game. This year, we're doing something different. We're going to go back through all sorts of great moments from the Midsummer Classic we're going to enjoy, and there might be some surprises along the way. Welcome into Crafting the Call. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, voice of the Lansing Lugnuts.
I'm Josh Suchon, the voice of the Albuquerque Isotopes. Jesse, I always get excited about the All-Star game. I loved that moment with Cal Ripken Jr. I was in attendance of that one. That's back when I was still a newspaper reporter. I was covering that All-Star game for the Oakland Tribune. I remember writing 4 stories from that game. And as much as I loved being a newspaper reporter, I love broadcasting even more. And as someone who watched the All-Star game on a regular basis, as a kid, as an adult, and now to analyze it with you as what broadcasters say and what they do is super exciting.
We began with Cal Ripken Jr., who I'm a Marylander. I grew up with Junior playing every single game at shortstop. And so I remember that moment and how much that meant to everybody from all around the state. That here, because he always homered in big moments, and here he is homering in another big moment.
The 2001 All-Star game was like this pivotal kind of like transition moment, right? Like you can tell from that, it's not high def yet, right? That might be the last All-Star game before there was high def, or maybe there was one more. And so much of it was, you've got an All-Star game in Seattle. It's now outdoors, right? There's no longer a dome in Seattle. This is the celebration of baseball in Seattle. The Mariners were the best team in baseball that year. You had Ichiro Suzuki, who had taken baseball by storm. You had Randy Johnson returning to Seattle. It was 51 versus 51. Randy Johnson versus Ichiro to start the game. Plus, it was the celebration of Tony Gwynn and Cal Ripken. And it just felt like to me, that was one of the last times where it felt like baseball was truly center stage, Midsummer Classic. And it's one of my all-time favorite All-Star games. And then Cal's home run is one of the first ones that always comes to mind. And I think that Joe Buck nailed it. As I went back, as I was watching that clip, Jesse, the first thing I thought was, oh, yeah, that's right. Cal Ripken had all these different stances. And that's immediately what Joe Buck says. I feel like it's a classic Joe Buck call from that time frame, which is call it, shut up, long layout, let the camera and the images and everything else do it, and then we're going to hear McCarver unless I cut him off.
Something that we've talked about before is just how difficult the All-Star game is to prepare for a play-by-play man. There's so many different things that you've got to get ready for and get right, and all the different things that you need to remember is coming up later on in the broadcast. What do we have from the start? Because the first inning, there's so much build up to it. And now here's this batter stepping in. And that's where that Joe Buck minimalism in the All-Star game, it's a strength that truly lends itself to it. And I agree with you. What do we have next?
Well, speaking of Seattle, let's go back in time, but also to the same city.
Tonight against Mike Lacoste. Pops it up, right side. Parker, Morgan. They lost it. It drops. And it's a 2-base hit, and Rice is going to try for 3, and he will not make it. Dave Parker are talking to each other out there now, Morgan and Parker.
That's part of what we told you about, the Bermuda Triangle from second base to right around that spot and back out towards center field. But what a recovery to show a tremendous throwing arm with a perfect one-hopper to say to get Rice. Wow.
Boy, I tell you, when you got an arm like that, you can erase a lot of mistakes. When you have speed like him, you can erase a lot of mistakes. He just simply lost the ball, and then when he threw the ball, Tony, he looked around and threw his arms up and said, I never did see it.
Better, and baseball fans glad of it.
Line drive, right field. We may have a play at the plate. Big hop. Here comes Downing. Here's the throw. It is. He knocked him off the plate. What a tag by Carter. A tremendous play by Carter. Oh, baby, what a play.
And what a throw by Dave Parker, who continues to show why some people consider him the greatest player in the game. One big hop. Watch it. Great play by Carter, as you said, Joe. A strong throw. Downing tries to slide inside, away from the ball. Carter blocks him off.
He knocked him right off the plate, never did let him in. How Carter was able to catch that ball. Now he cuts loose with the ball, but now watch Carter knock the runner off the plate. Right there, he pushes him off, almost gets in there. Look at his hand. Tremendous work by our crew. And Carter comes up with the ball, and he had a good ball to handle, Tony.
Oh, I'll tell you, all the way on the fly. No hitting a cutoff man in this situation. No slowing the ball down on hitting on the artificial surf or anything else. He threw it all the way on the fly.
Rest in peace, Dave Parker, the Cobra. He was the MVP of that All-Star game, Jesse. That might be one of the only times that someone was an MVP purely for what they did defensively with those two throws.
Can you blame them? Startling. And as we sum up Dave Parker's career and now his life is paid tribute to, these are highlights that should be shown to everybody who has not heard of his legend. Josh, the camera work on these to show the utter arm strength from multiple angles, staying with that ball in the air as if it's a bird in flight. Staggering.
So that's Joe Garagiola, who's on play-by-play, and Tony Kubek, who is the analyst. Joe Garagiola, former player, former catcher. Always thought he was miscast doing play-by-play. I think one of the best things that NBC ever did was bringing Vin Scully, the greatest baseball broadcaster of all time, into their fold, and that allowed Garagiola to go back over to becoming an analyst, which is what he was much better at. Because I think that there's a couple of different, even just those two clips, Garagiola's wording on the first one, he will not make it. He's ahead of himself, thinking that it's going to be safe. And then in the second one, he immediately notes that Carter knocked him off the plate. That's like immediately what his brain goes to. This is a former catcher. This is an analyst who immediately gets into analyzing the play as opposed to describing the play and then going back for the multiple replays to analyze it.
It's well observed. I want to go back into the first one too. You can tell how close they are as friends because Joe's trying to follow the ball, but also as the broadcaster, we're watching the fielders. And it's Tony who notes first, he's lost it. So now Joe notes he's lost it. And the words that Joe uses, I don't think you'd ever have a broadcaster say it's a 2-base hit.
Mm-hmm.
He encapsulates the moment. It's a double, but he's going to try for third. And then here comes the throw. And Tony Kubek immediately is there to go, what a throw by Parker. And it's the same thing for the second play, where it's Joe saying he knocked him off the plate, and it's Tony immediately pointing out the throw, that the two of them, with their baseball processing minds, because they are two color commentators, it's fascinating to see Joe's looking at this and Tony's looking at this, and Tony points out, Tony immediately gets into the headline, this is why people consider that Dave Parker could be the greatest star in the game.
I just loved all the stars that were in even just those two plays, right? You had Jim Rice, you had Parker, you had Joe Morgan. Ron Say, not a Hall of Famer, but one of the best players of his generation. We saw the back of Pete Rose there as the throw goes over his head. So many great stars. But again, Jesse, this is 1979 to 2001. Just what a difference baseball looked differently. And then we're even going to see how much different baseball looks and sounds now. But you think about just how stale the kingdom was. Indoors, a ball that's lost in the dome. It's a super high hop. You have to play deep as an outfielder because of that. And then you transition to what baseball is like now on natural grass in Seattle, where the roof is open. It's such a contrast in how much baseball has changed just from 79 to 2001.
Well, it's cycled because we started with grass field and no roofs. and then we went into the roof and the artificial turf. I do think that transitioning from this is broadcasting as it was, but not what it's going to be.
Mhm.
But the camera work now, this is what we're used to. All angles, all replays that we can show to try to get, how does it look from this side? How does it look from that side? Where further can we show you this angle to understand what just happened? We are getting that way with the technology as we move forward.
So the famous 1975 All-Star game, the Red Sox and the Reds, they put a camera inside the monster. And that's where you started to see like these different angles of baseball games that you've never seen before.
So
and then, yes, exactly. And then the clip there from 1979, there was never a camera behind the right fielder until then. And so that shot that you pointed out, so beautiful, being able to see from behind Parker, that really just illustrates his arm strength. That was the next evolution in broadcasting baseball, was putting cameras in these different locations around the ballpark.
I would like to argue that Dave Parker wins MVP of the All-Star game and that his legend is such because of those camera shots.
Mm-hmm.
Because that helps us understand what we just saw. If you just show me the first play and that is it, and I see this one-hop throw into third and I go, boy, that's a good throw. And then you show me that he basically threw it flat-footed and you show me the pure arm strength, then I have a better understanding of how truly great that was.
Rest in peace, Dave Parker. Loved
By the way,
watching him play.
Catcher can't do that anymore, can he?
Exactly, yes. All right. In the ongoing evolution of how much baseball has changed, we just saw from 2001 to 1979. Now let's just skip ahead to just a couple of years ago to see how much more technology has changed.
Junior is wearing a mic and an earpiece out there at short. How you doing, Fernando?
What up, boys? Chilling over here.
Yeah, you having any fun? You've been
Having a great
smiling
time.
ever since.
You have to. You have to. When you're living the dream, you have to, Robert.
Well, now nobody on. Ohtani's second at bat, robbed of the hit on a good play by Adam Frazier back in the first inning. And he grounds to the right side. Freeman flips for the out. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., how good of friends are you two?
That's my boy since childhood, man. We come up together. We're kind of living almost the same life. You know, we grew up as a son of major leaguers, and it's had been almost a safe ride for both of us.
Yeah! Goodbye! Wow! Guerrero Jr. has double delayed. Say something to him on his way around.
Quédate parado un rato más.
Vladdy Jr. with a monster shot. It's 2-0 American League.
So that gets into the evolution of miking up players during games, and where you're having this conversation, not just with someone who is out of the game in the dugout, but someone who is playing shortstop or on the mound or at the plate, Jesse, the next evolution. Not the next, but kind of the current evolution of these things.
Well, and when you get the right guy in the right moment, you basically have another color commentator, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that it works better when it's not an interview and when it's a conversation and when you do get to comment on the moment and when you do get to fill in the blanks. I got to see Fernando and Vladdy when they were both in the Midwest League in 2017 as teenagers. So they had known each other for years and years since they were kids. And then I got to see them competing against one another, with Tatis coming up through the Padres system, single A, and Vladdy coming up through the Blue Jays system, single A. And they were teammates together in the Midwest League All-Star game. So that step in their relationship, as they really were climbing the ladder at the exact same time. And I got to see their affection for one another. That adds to this moment. It is not every player who it works on the microphone. It is not every moment that works with a player mic'd up or with the All-Star game as we're trying to say, well, how can we keep this compelling? But when it works and we do get that insight on the personal relationship, and Joe does get to prompt Fernando to say, hey, he's coming around, say something to him. It is a beautiful thing because I would argue as broadcasters, we have a duty to tell the story of these players as people. And then we get to enjoy what they do. That was a monstrous home run. And now we get to hear from his good friend as he's rounding the bases.
I love Tatis's reaction where he just puts his hands up above his head immediately.
Surrender, Cobra.
Yeah. I actually think that over the last couple of years, there's been too many players mic'd up to the point where it's like less is more. And because of that, at a certain point, like the entire broadcast it just becomes like, okay, who's the next player who's going to be mic'd up? And I think that less is more when it comes to that. I think that this moment arrived so beautifully that it showed what it can be and how fun it can be when a player is mic'd up. And I would almost argue that because of that moment, that is what has propelled us to get to the point where there's too much of it now, right? Because that happened.
So I would ask the question, are you adding to the game? Are you distracting from the game? And I look at the wave. When the wave goes around a ballpark, is it bringing much needed energy, or is it in fact a distraction in the moment? And what works about this is Fernando Tatis being mic'd up actually adds, because it also adds to the batter's story.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are now involved with Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s batting. Tatis is in the field. Do you know what I mean? Like, it works together, whereas so many of these interviews, it is something to just carry us through the inning, and we're not paying any attention to what's happening.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so now that we've jumped ahead to modern times, let's once again go back in time to get a reminder of what All-Star Game broadcasts used to look like and sound like.
Surprisingly, has really been struggling with men in scoring position, and he's got the bases loaded. He's hitting less than 200 with men in scoring position. He out at first, Carew at second, Trio at third, 2 out. And he drives it to deep right. Back goes Murphy, away back, and there it is, the first grand slam in All-Star history. Cover on the first grand slam home run in All-Star history, hit by that man, smiling Fred Lynn.
Here's his time at bat. Watch the reaction. He knows he touched it off. He's watching it. American League is a bit upset, man.
What an inning. 7 runs in the third inning. And look at Fred Lynn as he has just knocked in 4. We'll be back with more fireworks. 9-1 American.
This was actually one of the first games that Vin Scully did on a national stage, right? This is the 1983 All-Star Game. It's at Comiskey Park. Vin is already a recipient of the Frick Award. He's already in Cooperstown. This was the start of his work on NBC, where people like me, Jesse, started to realize how great he was as I was watching this game as a kid. And I think this shows the initial philosophy of Vin when he first got on the national stage, right? He is giving you what Fred Lynn has struggled with, runners in scoring position. He calls the play a super long layout. And then it's almost like you can tell that Vin is specifically watching that monitor. And he says, hit by that man, smiling Fred Lynn. And I think that we start to see, like, this was the ultimate in Vin establishing himself as a national broadcaster with this play, with this call.
It's funny that we started off this show with older Cal Ripken Jr. and there's rookie Cal Ripken Jr. on the bench right next to smiling Fred Lynn. Also, if you go back to Vladdy and Tatis, huge complaint of that time period that we just talked about, the modern one, quote unquote. How nice is it to see everyone in their uniform, right? In their team uniform. Not only does Vin lay out, and when the first thing that he says when he comes back is that Atli Hamaker has been driven to cover, right? There's no, they're going to make a pitching change. He just lets the sounds tell everything, which allows us to hear the fans singing, na, 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 hey, hey, goodbye. It gives you the full atmosphere. And the broadcast leans into that because, Josh, there is no rush to show the instant replay. We'll get to the replay, and they do show it. But we're taking in the full crowd. We're taking in the dugout. We're taking in the mound meeting. And I love that there is no rush in this case. We are letting the whole thing tell a story before Vin lets us know, pitching change, let's go to Fred Lynn.
If anything, the director is a little bit late in cutting to the exploding scoreboard, which is, look, I mean, part of an all-star game broadcast is you're showcasing the ballpark.
Yes.
You're showcasing the city. And that's what Comiskey Park was known for, right? They would shoot off fireworks after every home run. They had this exploding scoreboard. And so when they finally cut to the scoreboard, they missed it. But the fireworks were so loud, like even now, I was jumping in my seat about how loud it was. But then even as Vin goes to break, he says more fireworks when we come back, right? And it's just how Vin has been able to blend what he learned as a radio broadcaster in New York, taking that to Los Angeles, and now he is establishing himself. Remember, 1983, very few games are on television back then, right? I mean, not even half the games are on television. And Vin is basically the broadcaster who kind of taught us all and showed us the way of this is how you lean in to a difference between a radio and a TV broadcast.
He's right on the first All-Star Game Grand Slam, too. The second that ball is gone, first Grand Slam in All-Star Game history.
All right. You want to go even further back?
Sure.
Let's go even further back.
Right into the stretch. Looking back and throws up the middle. Rose is on his way around. Picked up by Otis. Rose is coming to the plate. Throws the throw. He's in. It's all over. The National League wins.
So Kurt Gowdy had the play-by-play call on TV, but Josh, this isn't Kurt. This is Jim Simpson, we believe, on the radio call.
Yeah, and even this, the entire thing is picked up by the center field camera, right? You think about all of the different angles, and I think there might have been one other angle that got shown, but it goes to show how few cameras they used in those games. It goes to show how just the lack of what we come to expect in games now. But also, Joe Simpson, there's no mention of collision at home. He barrels over him. There's no immediate judgment on whether this was the right or wrong play. It's just Rose scores and the National League wins.
Yeah, he's in. It's over. It's a minimalist call, but it's a minimalist call that doesn't bring the points, right? Joe Buck is minimalist in his own way. Vin Scully is minimalist in his own way. But they actually let you know what matters. And what matters most here is that terrible collision, which has taken two different avenues. There's the avenue of this is when the All-Star game meant something. This is who Pete Rose was as a ball player. And there's this had devastating impact for Ray Fosse moving forward.
So what's interesting is there's this narrative out there that this ruined Ray Fosse's career, that Ray was never the same player afterwards, right? Here's a couple of facts about this. I went and looked this up. Ray Fosse started the first game after the All-Star break, started the second, started the third, started the fourth, started the fifth, started the sixth, started the seventh, started the eighth, started the ninth, and then caught both games of a doubleheader the 10th game after the All-Star break. And Ray Fosse was an All-Star again the following season. So get out of here with this. Ray Fosse's career was never the same. Now, Ray Fosse had a lot of injuries. and his career definitely was shortened because of the injuries. The primary injury was when he broke up a fight between his teammates before a World Series game was the more devastating injury. But the whole idea that this ruined Ray Fosse's career, hogwash. But give me more what you think about this play, because I know Ray Fosse personally, as do you. I love Ray Fosse, and so I don't want to turn this too much into a pro Ray Fosse, but what else are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is something where I yield to you in terms of the personal notes of it. It makes me think of a minor league camera angle, because this is where we've caught up to, is we've now seen what technology is like at the major league level. Now, minor league teams, and this has been a little bit of a slow time coming, and more minor league teams having their games be TV ready. And so you'll see, how does this team use its limited cameras? Because cameras are expensive, and it's tough to find a good camera operator. So seeing this view of the collision from the center field camera, I feel like I could see this on a minor league broadcast today.
Whenever the All-Star game comes around, so I used to cover the Oakland A's. I was the A's beat writer for the Oakland Tribune, and I covered the team for 3 years. And whenever the All-Star game came around, I always started to feel empathy toward Ray Fosse, because I knew that this was going to get shown and that Ray Fosse was once again going to have people talking about him in this collision. Pete Rose has also told this story over the years about how he and Ray Fosse had dinner the night before, and that's just how it was back then. And Ray Fosse has always said, no, that is just not true. We did not have dinner the night before. Right?
You mean that Pete Rose wasn't trustworthy?
Right? But what Ray Fosse has reminded people of, including myself and at other functions, is that when Pete Rose went to jail, he went to jail in Ray Fosse's hometown. And Ray Fosse's brother was one of the security guards when Pete Rose went to jail.
There's no wild walk-off celebration after this collision. There is immediate checking on Ray.
Yeah.
From the National Leaguers.
I can only think about what First Take would look like, right? What Pardon the Interruption would look like if that happened nowadays, right? So much of the modern game is, we're talking to this guy who's playing shortstop as his childhood friend hits a home run and he's happy for his childhood friend, as opposed to this was how Pete Rose played baseball in 1970. He didn't care that it was an exhibition. He was going to run somebody over, right? It goes to show the sign of the times technologically, and also from just a baseball standpoint, and kind of we're all in this together amongst players standpoint.
I am cynical about sports talk today because, and I loved Around the Horn, which just ended. However, the whole idea of winning points for making points in an argument, in a discussion, just choosing an opinion and stating that, and look, you have points, that makes me very cynical. And I feel like a lot of sports pundits today stake out opinions on things that maybe they don't honestly feel, or they are trying to find ways to get eyes on them. And so I would be worried when you actually have a thing like this, where there's a collision at the plate in the All-Star game to this point between a player in Ray Fosse who's very widely liked and a Pete Rose, who is a lightning rod in the sport. I'm actually glad that we did not have today's punditry. However, I do not think it should be forgotten what kind of sports punditry we did have at the time, and what we had for years and years and decades, which was very powerful newspaper columnists who were shaping people's views of players for better or for worse. If a columnist liked you, or if a columnist disliked you, they could wield great power with the opinion of the people.
So back in the 1970s and even into the 1980s, you would have a pitcher go 2 innings. They would sometimes even pitch 3 innings in a game. Sometimes the starters would play the entire game. At minimum, the starters would play 6, 7 innings of the game. And then as the time went on, we started to get what some people might refer to as the participation trophy-ification of America, right? Where if you make it to the All-Star game, you have to play, that everybody has to play. And then, of course, this is what leads into the 2002 All-Star game.
We know what they're talking about down there with the commissioner, Joe Torre, Jerry Davis, the home plate umpire. Bob Brenly is shielded by Jerry Davis. Sandy Alderson is there. Rich Levin. Everybody getting together trying to figure out what sort of a conclusion will suit everybody. And there is no doubt, that Joe Torre doesn't want to hurt Freddie Garcia. And Bob Brenly doesn't want to mess around with the health of Vicente Padilla. Now, somebody will be out there saying, well, what? It's 2 innings. What's the big deal? But these guys have worked. They've set themselves up. Their side work. Everything is for 2 innings max, and that's how they played it tonight. And I know Joe Torre and Bob Brenly, neither one of them feel comfortable with somebody who isn't their own pitcher running him back out there for a 3rd or a 4th inning.
And no pitchers pitched more than 2 innings tonight. Under those considerations, there is a good likelihood that this game could be called at the end of this half inning if the National League does not score a run.
Bob Brenly explaining it to his bench. And now he is being summoned back to that meeting. And this will probably be it for this game, as Joe Torre makes his way back to the American League dugout. So, the American League will not win. The National League can only be the winning side, or this game will end in a 7-7 tie.
And remember, the only tied All-Star game in the 72 played prior to tonight was on July 31st, 1961, when after a 30-minute rain delay, the game was tied at the end of 9 innings. The umpires called the game, making it the first game and only game in All-Star history to end in a tie.
Well, they're still talking about it. I mean, it's a pretty cut and dried issue here.
Yeah, I agree with you. No question about it. This is cut and dried. Number one, you don't have to make the decision right now. You ought to let the half inning play out and then make the decision. That's when you're going to have to.
All right, I'm going to scrub ahead now, and we understand what's going on here.
On your shoulders right now as they make the announcement. And Bud Selig is in the position of having to sit in the front row while this crowd reacts behind him. Lowell gets on with a base hit. And again, if the National League scores a run, that announcement and the decision that happened between the top and the bottom half of the 11th would be irrelevant.
So with that in mind, why make the announcement?
Now Vicente Padilla will step in.
You save yourself if the National League scores and you don't make the announcement. You save yourself the boos that are currently taking place here.
How ironic that Bud Selig, the commissioner of baseball, it's the All-Star game here to Milwaukee, and because it's a 7-7 game in the 11th inning, and it may end tied, it may, it's booed here at Miller Park. No balls, 2 strikes, as Padilla tries to get a bunt down to get Lowell into scoring position for Benito Santiago. On 0-2, Padilla showed bunt, took a hack. Just another entry on a long list of things happening in the game of baseball. In a celebration, Midsummer Classic. You could have controversy. That gets away, and now the winning run is at second base with 1 out. And Padilla take his swings. Benito Santiago, it appears, will get a chance. He's on deck.
Lowell, an alert job of going to second base. Because of that announcement, in my view, this game is all of a sudden taking on the view of playing the game in your backyard. Officialdom has gone.
Padilla strikes out. It's going to be up to Benito Santiago.
By the way, I think Tim McCarver is fabulous right now.
They wanted to prepare the crowd, and they gave this crowd a chance to react and show their displeasure with the decision that either a run or an out will end this night of baseball, either in a victory for the National League or in a tie game. There will be no 12th inning. But Santiago could end it in favor of the National League. And again, it's been 10 years since Benito Santiago's been an All-Star. He singled in his first at-bat. If he does it here, he could win it for the National League. 1 ball, 1 strike.
Think about how much Bud Selig was cheering for Benito Santiago right now.
We hope to hear from the commissioner at the end of this game. Everybody right now in the world of baseball, a Benito Santiago fan. Santiago offered it that pitch, and this game could be down to its final pitch, final strike. And like a scene from Bad News Bears in Breaking Training, the crowd yelling, "Let them play." Bob Watson is here. He was the one that uttered the line in the movie. Santiago lays off 2-2. An awkward and unfortunate moment after that announcement.
So much for the crowd understanding the pitchers in the game. We both thought that there would be more understanding.
Garcia with a 2-2 pitch to Santiago. Game over. And this game will end in a 7-7 tie. We'll take a break and come back with much, much more. This game ends in a 7-7 tie after 11.
I think that Joe Buck and Tim McCarver are fabulous in this half inning. Jesse, your thoughts?
I disagree about Joe Buck. And the reason is, I think that there could be a different tone to all of this. And what Tim McCarver hits on immediately is, why make the announcement now? Why not play out this half inning, have it be exciting, and then go from there? We had this in the Midwest League. Midwest League All-Star Game in Dayton, Ohio. And it went into, I believe, the 10th inning. And it was just understood teams were out of pitchers. But there was this feeling of excitement. Could the East Division walk off with a win? And the crowd was rocking. And the moment was big. And the count went to 3-2. Bases loaded, 2 outs. And the ball was sent right through the middle of the infield. Walk-off single. Everybody celebrated, not a tie. And there was just this feeling of not relief, but joy. And there is no joy to be found here. Joe Buck, when the joy is gone from him, when there's no enjoyment, and you can tell what he's feeling, he is a tough watch for me, because you can tell that he is not happy. And I think that that is affecting everything about this broadcast. This is a joyless watch. This is the sort of watch where it is going to make you angry on your couch. And it did. That this game is hurtling toward a tie. All the while, Tim McCarver, as you say, bullseye upon bullseye upon bullseye. When Tim McCarver says that this game is no longer a baseball game, it's just a game that you play in your backyard. Yes, Tim, every All-Star game is that way. But we keep up the illusion that this is a great game, an exhibition game played among the all-stars of baseball, because ever since the very first All-Star game, this has been an advertisement for baseball of showing the very best, all playing together on the same field in a game that does not matter, but this is fun. And in that moment, you can feel there is no fun in the broadcast booth or in the crowd. What do you think?
The reason why I think that Buck is good is that he lays out at times, and when the crowd starts chanting, "Let them play," he lets you know these are the words. And then the camera shows people, and you can read their lips. He knows that this is from Bad News Bears breaking training. He mentions Bob Watson, that Bob Watson is there. Even as they keep showing Bud Selig, he uses the word awkward, and how, Bud Selig, former owner of the Brewers, this is his hometown. This was the team that he brought from Seattle. This was supposed to be like his shining time for Milwaukee. I would not want him to be happy and celebrating at this moment. I would not. I feel like there's this straddling of the line of trying to explain this is why there is not going to be a 12th inning. But also, I don't think that Joe, nor should Joe, be in a position of defending baseball. And I think that Tim McCarver's the one who, it's kind of his job to pile on. And McCarver doesn't care. McCarver's going to pile on. Right?
Oh, yeah. He crushes it.
Mm-hmm. Even just rewatching it right now, my thought is, why in the world is Vicente Padilla batting? The idea that the pitchers were batting in the All-Star game, I think it was 1990 at Wrigley Field. The game ended where the National League was putting together like this big comeback, and then they ran out of position players, and the game ended with the pitcher at the plate. And I remember just thinking, this is so dumb. You should never have the pitchers bat in an All-Star game. But once again, I think there'd be another element of, and this is what we've gotten into with arguments now, which I'm a big believer in, is everybody doesn't have to play. You need to keep holding on to players so that Vicente Padilla is not batting in the 11th inning. You don't need to throw everybody in a game. If 2 or 3 guys don't pitch, that's okay, so that we can still keep having pitchers available in case this thing keeps going and going and going. And this became a huge turning point in the history of the Midsummer Classic, Jesse.
I'm swayed by your point. So I ask you, should Bud Selig have been cast as the face of it all? Since this is out of his hands, this is determined by the players, by the coaches. The coaches are going, we've got no more pitching, so we're just going to end it here. Okay, that's the decision that's made, right? Mm-hmm. It's just Selig who rubber stamps it.
I could be wrong with this, but I'm almost positive that the whole idea that everybody must play, it goes back to, and you might know this as a Baltimore guy, Mike Mussina did not pitch, right?
Cito Gaston.
Right? And it was in Baltimore, and Mike Mussina did not pitch. And there was enormous outrage, right? And Cito Gaston was the villain in Baltimore for so long, maybe even to this day. And from that point on, it became this idea that everybody gets to play. I remember covering the 2001 All-Star game, and there was this sentiment that the goal was to make sure that everybody played. I remember in the bottom of the 9th inning of that 2001 All-Star game, there was 3 different pitchers who each got 1 out in the last inning to make sure that everybody got into the game. Bobby Valentine actually did it in a fairly smart way, where the final pitcher was Ben Sheets. And Ben Sheets was a starting pitcher with the idea that if it did go extra innings, at least Ben Sheets as a starter could pitch the 10th, could pitch the 11th, could keep pitching a little bit longer and a little bit longer. But yeah, that's when it really did turn into everybody must play. And I don't like that. I want Shohei Ohtani to get 5 at-bats. Right?
Mussina, if you remember, he warmed up. Even though he was not supposed to be warming up. He was not warming up for anything. But he went to the bullpen and he was warming up in the bullpen, which got the crowd even more irate. And there was a great rivalry between the Orioles and the Blue Jays dating back to the 1989 season. I want to go back and, okay, I'm going to ask the big question. What's the All-Star game for? What's the purpose?
Celebrate baseball. Showcase baseball.
In the 1960s, it was to raise money for the player pension, right? They would hold 2 All-Star games a year. And what was this? This was from 1959 through 1962 because they needed to increase the money going to the players' pension fund. This feeling of the purpose of the All-Star game is a question that I feel is a very important one to confront. Football is constantly confronting this, going, all right, what are we going to do with the Pro Bowl? Basketball is confronting this and going, how do we save the All-Star game? What can we do? Because there's this understanding that the baseball All-Star game, regardless of its failures, disappointments over the years. It's better than all the others. And none of the others have this situation where you have a pitcher firing 95 and at a batter who's trying to hit a home run. You can't promise defense in any of the others. You can't promise any kind of semblance. If that ball is hit screaming out to left field, that left fielder is going to try to catch it in the baseball all-star game. However, that purpose of the game and where does the competitiveness come from and what needs to be done at the end, Josh, I'm going to veer in a totally different direction. Are you ready?
Yeah.
This forestalled putting a bonus runner, the Manfred man, at second base because we were in the midst of a gigantic push to try to figure out pitching health. Remember when pitch count suddenly became a thing and the 1980s pitchers were burning out and you could look at guy after guy after guy. You're going, this guy's heading to Cooperstown, and then the arm would break. Not everyone was Roger Clemens or Nolan Ryan. And so let's put a pitch count of 120 pitches on a guy. Let's put a pitch count of 100 pitches. And now here we go. We have turned the century as we're trying desperately to figure out we cannot have a guy get hurt in the All-Star game. And now we've reached the point too, we cannot have unlimited extra innings because we just need to think about pitching health.
Yeah, I remember there was this thing called pitcher abuse points, right? From Baseball Prospectus. And that's when you started to look at who are the guys that have been abused the most and which of these pitchers have ended up with injuries as a result of it. So remember, this All-Star game is 2002. And very much became an issue after this game of if you pitched on Sunday, you're not going to be on the roster.
No way.
And then it became, well, let's still allow them to be all-stars, but they're not going to be on the active roster.
Yes.
Right? And I remember thinking, well, then why are we holding the All-Star game on Tuesday? Right? Why don't we hold the All-Star game on Wednesday so everybody has at least 2 days rest? You know what I'm saying?
Well, especially because they jam in so many different All-Star festivities. They're holding the Futures game on Saturday. Put it on a day where there's a break to allow everyone the real chance to see all these prospects. They've shortened the draft to 2 days. There's so much more time that you can just to give more eyeballs on everything that you would like to showcase about the game. And the Home Run Derby is another matter entirely. But I've called a couple of All-Star games. My team has hosted a couple of All-Star games. And when pitchers are named All-Stars, there's so much communication between manager and pitching coach. And then that player's manager and pitching coach just to understand what can he do? What can't he do? How can I use him? Because you're trying to take extra good care of all of these players.
Yeah. So as a result of what we just saw in 2002, that's what led to now it matters, right? Now there's
this time it counts.
Yes. This time it counts. There's going to be home field advantage for the winning team. And again, we're going to start to get into these things of where if you pitched on Sunday, you are not going to be active for the game, but you can still show up. And there became more of an emphasis of let's save a few other players or let's expand the roster so that there's even more pitchers that are available so that Vicente Padilla is not batting in the 11th inning. And so all of which leads to 2008. This was the final year of the old Yankee Stadium. And this became one of just these like monumental all-star games. And here we are just 6 years later. Once again, they go extra innings. And so let's skip ahead to the very ending of 2008.
Inning, Michael Young pops it up, right field, Corey Hart. Morneau tags at third. Here we go. Throw by Hart to the plate. And safe. This game is over. Morneau scores. Terry Francona exhales. And the American League has won again, and they will have home field advantage in the upcoming World Series. And there is nobody happier in this park than Terry Francona.
Now, Terry Francona, not the only guy exhaling. He's got company.
Avoiding having to play another inning. Corey Hart got his momentum going. Through to the plate. The tag by McCann was just late. Morneau in just ahead of the tag, and this game 4 hours and 50 minutes after it started is over, with the AL winning it in 15, 4-3.
They must be drained.
4 hours and 50 minutes. The word exhales, I thought, was the correct word that Joe Buck used, Tim McCarver used, for the quantity of people exhaling that the game finally ended there.
It's so fun to contrast that we've got our same broadcasters on hand.
Mhm.
We've got a game that's playing deeper and deeper. And how do you call the finish? Not quite a pop-up, right? It's more of a fly ball,
Mhm.
but the thoughts turning right to Terry Francona.
Because ultimately it does come down to the managers, right? When we go back to 2002 and Bud Selig was vilified, and it might be one of the rare times in my life that I actually felt bad for Bud Selig. It might be the only time in my life that I've ever felt bad for Bud Selig. Because he didn't do anything. He wasn't the one who selected the players and the managers and decided who was going to get used and all of that. I mean, he became the face of it because they kept showing him, and because he ultimately had to make the decision. Right, yeah, he's the commish. It comes with the job, right? But ultimately, yeah, it's the managers who make the decision of who's going to play and who's going to pitch, how many innings and all that.
Let me throw something at you. What if we got the camera angle that we just got for Dave Parker for that Corey Hart throw?
Yeah, I would have loved to see that, actually. Also goes to show, you know, the difference in arm strength of the right fielder who was in the game late in 1979 versus 2008, and just how great Dave Parker was. Right?
All the parallels, so many parallels.
Yeah, yeah. So it's the more that we get through this episode, you really do see the history of America, the history of technology, the history of ballparks, the history of how players are used and why they're used. And it all leads into, and really, it's one of the things that I love about baseball, Jesse, is I feel like baseball has the ability to tell history better than any other sport, from what the players look like, right? You think about the number of black stars that we saw in 1979 that were on the field, that we saw in the 1980s, and how you don't see them anymore. The fewer and fewer black baseball players that exist. And that's evident when you watch the All-Star Game introductions. You see that with the technology. You see that with the sons of major leaguers who are now dominating the sport. You see it in all of these different ways, Jesse.
I think you see it with the body types too, because the body types of baseball players very much change over the years.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm excited for this year's All-Star Game, especially after looking at all the different examples through the years.
It is one of my favorite baseball games all season.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And you can show me any inning of any All-Star game, and I will sit back and I will go, who's the pitcher? All right. Who's the batter? All right. Let's see what happens in this at bat. It's kind of like, do you have a favorite TV show that you could just put on an episode and you go, and I love this scene. Mm-hmm. That's the All-Star Game for me. Who knows how it's going to end, but seeing that batter versus that pitcher, I love that. And I love that you swayed me on Joe Buck, because I've started to think about what is the responsibility of the broadcaster in this spot? How should the broadcaster call the All-Star Game? And Joe Buck really is, in that moment, he is his own mouthpiece, and you can feel what he's feeling, just like you can feel what he's feeling in the 15th inning. But it is such a great, weighty responsibility to be the voice of a game for the top games every single year. And how do you fare here? So we began with Joe, with Cal Ripken Jr. We ended with Joe on the play at the plate. So, yeah, I appreciate taking this ride with you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone. Enjoy this year's All-Star Game. For Jesse Goldberg-Strassler of the Lansing Lugnuts, I'm Josh Suchon of the Albuquerque Isotopes. May you be an all-star in whatever you do. Just don't let it end in a tie.